Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to get started, be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you for coming out. This is a great turnout. I'm Dave Davies. I'm the chair of the Lake of the Woods External Affairs Committee. The EAC advises the board of directors on matters outside of the gates that affect the quality of life of Lake of the Woods residents. We're concerned with local and state government, land use and zoning, traffic, utilities, and other potential impacts such as data centers and uncontrolled growth. The EAC has asked the LOA board to write letters regarding issues such as the lawsuit regarding the rezoning of Wilderness Crossing and the permit application to allow potentially PFAS-contaminated biosolids to be applied to Orange County farmlands. However, nothing is of greater concern than our drinking water. Some time ago, the LOA board asked the EAC if we would conduct a series of town halls, the purpose being to bring together individuals who are involved in and responsible for areas impacting Lake of the Woods and residents, providing information and an opportunity for residents to ask questions. This is the third such meeting. The first one included our state delegate, Phil Scott, who was just reelected to another term, Orange County Supervisor Brian Nickel, who represents most of Low, and Sandy Harrington, District 5 Orange County School Board member. The second town hall was a candidate forum, including candidates for state delegate, county supervisor, and school board from District 4, which includes part of Lake of the Woods. I want to recognize some people who are here this evening. Supervisor Brian Nickel is over here. Thank you. I know I'll miss somebody here, but I've seen at least two members of the Lake of the Woods board, Frank Heisler and Tracy Nickel. Anybody else from the board here? Oh, thank you, Tracy. I also want to recognize the other members of the External Affairs Committee who are here tonight. Sandy Harrington, who doubles as our school board rep, is here. Terry Vickery. Jack Fend, who some of you have met checking in and writing down questions. Kingsley Haynes. I didn't think I saw Richard Trost here tonight, but he's a very active member. Another member, who many of you know, Pat Licata, is recovering from hip replacement surgery yesterday, and she is doing fine. I talked to her this morning. I talked to John. She is up and around. She's actually planning to do an interview tomorrow for the fundraiser that they're doing. So if you know Pat, you know they can't keep her down. Our speakers tonight include, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well, but from the State Office of the Drinking Water, the Virginia Department of Health, Dwayne Roadcap, Jeremy Hull, Bailey Davis, and Grant Cronenberg. We also have, for the second half of the program, Richard Jacobs from the Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm grateful to all five of them for coming tonight, so let's give them a round of applause. We'll begin tonight with drinking water. Most of you are well aware that in August of 2024, Eastern Orange County had a water crisis that resulted in our not being able to drink water for almost a week. It turns out that a catastrophic pump failure at the RSA Wilderness Water Treatment Plant had caused food-grade mineral oil to burn and impact our water supply, resulting in an odor. It took several days for RSA staff and state officials to determine the source of the problem. However, this incident only served to illustrate our precarious situation in this part of the county, since we have only one source of water, the Rapidan River. Despite plans from about 10 years ago warning that a second source of water should be developed, there has been little, if any, progress toward that recommendation. During the water crisis, Spotsylvania County and the city of Fredericksburg shut off access to the Rapidan River and were able to draw on a secondary source. We did not have that luxury. In September of 2024, Jeremy Hull sent a notice of alleged violation to RSA General Manager Tim Clemens. In that letter, Hull required RSA to submit a detailed and comprehensive plan to address the violations and to schedule, quote, at least monthly meetings with the Culpeper Field Office to discuss the plan. In May of 2025, the Virginia State Board of Health issued a consent order between RSA and the State Board of Health. And also in May 2025, the Office of Drinking Water approved RSA's corrective action plan and schedule. As a disclaimer, I should add that although I am moderating tonight's town hall as chair of the External Affairs Committee, I was recently appointed to the RSA Board of Members as a representative of Eastern Orange County. In that role, I will do everything in my power to ensure progress on both the drinking water and the Lake of the Woods sewer system upgrades, a topic for another meeting. At this time, I'll turn things over to the gentleman from the Office of Drinking Water. I do have some questions. If you've written down any questions and have them, please get them to us. And if time permits, we'll open the floor to questions. And then at the hour, we'll turn things over to Stormwater Management and Mr. Jacobs. So, gentlemen, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dwayne Roadcap. I'm the director for the Office of Drinking Water. Pleasure to be here. I have with me Jeremy Hull on the end. He's our director for the field office that covers this area. Next to him is Grant Cronenberg. He's our director for compliance and enforcement. And next to him is Bailey Davis, our chief of field operations. So we brought a team here for you to help with your questions so we can cover the gambit from engineering. So we have an engineer at the table here. We have an attorney here at the table. I won't name who it is, but it probably has to do with compliance and enforcement. And then we have some technical and environmental specialists here as well. So what I'd like to do is say that you have a really beautiful community here. This is the second time I've been here to this place. I find it a wonderful community. I think there's a lot of involvement from your political leaders. You showing up here tonight shows about how you care about your community and about your drinking water. And we all understand how important the drinking water is. What I'd like to do is just sort of give you a big, broad understanding about the Office of Drinking Water and our role and our responsibilities that we have across the Commonwealth. So if you didn't know, the drinking water program is a federal program. So it's no matter which state or territory that you go to, there's federal minimum requirements that have the same drinking water standards. So whether you're in Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, out west of California, there's minimum standards at the federal level under the Safe Drinking Water Act that we have to implement in Virginia. And then the state gets primacy to implement those federal rules through the Environmental Protection Agency. So our team has to do a lot of reporting to the Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level for the Commonwealth to enjoy primacy. And what the advantage of that is that we receive federal dollars through the US EPA to help manage the program. The state kicks in a fair amount of money as well. And then the regulated population also kicks in money. So we have three sources of funding for our operations and what we do for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's federal dollars, state dollars, and then special revenue, if you will, from the regulated community. There's 2,860 public water systems in Virginia, and we divide that work up amongst about 125 employees in 6 field offices and then in the central office. And so you'll have a team of about 15 to 17 individuals in each field office, and they're helping to regulate about 575 public water systems in a particular region. And so Jeremy's leading one of those divisions in our field office, of which this community is a part. So what do those staff do? Well, they're doing inspections. So they go out and they do routine inspections of the facilities of these 575 or so 475 or so public water systems that you might have in the area. And they can range from really small, like a gas station that's got a well in a rural county not connected to the public sewer, all the way up to very large population centers where you're dealing with Fairfax, Richmond, Roanoke, that sort of thing. And so the regulations have to account for the different sizes and the different needs of all the entities. So if you're a public water system, you only have to serve at least 25 people 60 days out of the year. So that's where we get nursing homes and businesses. Sometimes they're regulated, as well as the larger population centers that you have. We have about 110,000 water samples a year. So for your community here, every month there's 15 water samples that are collected throughout the distribution system. And then there's some additional sampling that goes on for lead, for copper. We do sampling now for PFAS. I heard that mentioned in the biosolids piece. So there's other sampling and things that we do in addition to the routine sampling. But your water system is routinely monitored. Those reports come to us directly from the labs. So the way this is set up is you have licensed operators with the public water system who take the samples, they deliver it to the lab. The lab runs the work on that and then delivers it directly to our office. We have a verification program where we do quality assurance, quality control training, making sure people are taking the samples at the right place, at the right location, doing it the right way, and getting those samples done. So we also issue permits. So this community here is looking to build a new water treatment plant. So that would require engineering plans, engineering designs. Those kinds of engineering plans and designs are reviewed by our office, and we do the comparison to the regulations, and making sure everything is right, and we issue a permit. We also address complaints and concerns. So whenever somebody's got a concern about their drinking water quality, we follow up on that on our end of it to try and help. Another thing that you would have noticed as being part of this community is we have ESF3 responsibilities. So that's Emergency Support Function 3 with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And so we have 24/7 coverage for any kind of an event that would happen with a water system. Your system fell into that, and there was a whole, effort that went through on when we didn't know what that odor was that was in the drinking water here, and it was very concerning. We've had some similar instances over the past year. So just a couple of weeks ago, there was a train derailment in New Kent County, rather significant train derailment. And so, there was some diesel released, and then there was a whole bunch of coal that was associated with that train facility. So there was a whole lot of work that our team did to monitor, what systems and impacts might occur from that kind of spill. We're routinely monitoring things that happen on I-95, for example, with crashes and things. When Hurricane Helene came through about a year ago, we were directly involved in that, and that had a really massive impact down in far southwest Virginia in the Blacksburg area. Blacksburg, Virginia, for example, in the Roanoke region, specifically Blacksburg and Montgomery County, that region, Virginia Tech. They were on a boil water advisory for a little over 2 weeks down there from Hurricane Helene. And part of what had happened there, to just sort of give you a feel or a sense of this, they didn't have a backup water source like you do not, and they didn't have an interconnection with another public water source. And when the hurricane came through, it dropped, I think it was on the order of around 20 inches of rain, and it changed the water quality in the river rather significantly, very quickly. They had a new water treatment plant that had literally just come online, and it wasn't able to keep up with the sediment and the other things that were coming through with that kind of an event. And so there was a lot of cleaning and getting the water treatment plant back up to operations, doing the water sampling, cleaning out the distribution system, and it took a couple of weeks, and it was a long time. We've had some other instances around the state. There was a warehouse fire that impacted the city of Emporia, south of Richmond. And so when you had a big warehouse fire, a lot of chemicals can release into the river body. and the city of Emporia was pulling water from an intake on the river body down slope of that event, and that turned out to be a rather significant event. So all of that is to say that the unknown odor event that you experienced here was very impactful. It's one of those things that we don't want to see happen. It shouldn't happen. There should be ways to prevent it. And there's some response that has followed from that, obviously, that we were talking about. One of the things that we monitor for our metrics is the percentage of water systems with a health-based violation. Your water system here has done a really good job over the past year of avoiding health-based violations. There were a couple of violations that this water system with the Rapidan Service Authority had with disinfection byproducts. But I can report for the last 3 quarters, that hasn't been the case. So again, it's that constant monitoring that we're doing. So the water quality here is very good, and we're happy to see that. We haven't had any new violations or new issues over the past year that have developed. There was a law at the General Assembly that started July the 1st, and it was about a 2-hour notice to the Office of Drinking Water. So if you have a significant problem with your equipment that's going to cause a widespread disruption of service, or if it's going to release a chemical or something into the water, you have to notify within 2 hours. And so that's something that we're doing here with this water system, as well as all the other water systems. And I'm happy to report that there haven't been any significant issues with your water system since this event last year. We have a lot of new rules that are coming forward that we were talking about with PFAS. The water quality for where you're drawing your water is really good, so we don't have a lot of PFAS risks. Is that right, Jeremy? Yep. And you know, your team here with the water treatment plant, you have about a 1.2 million gallon per day water treatment plant here. It operates 14 to 18 hours a day. You have a handful of licensed operators that operate that water system, and they're doing a really good job, you know, from what we're seeing. So since the event last year, the communication went from daily to weekly, and then it moved to monthly. And now we're on quarterly, which is a good sign, you know, that we don't need to be checking in every day and trying to find out what's happening and what's going on, that we're comfortable from the drinking water side that we can move to more of a 3-month monitoring with routine communications in between the operator staff and our staff, and that's been working really well. So no new notices of alleged violation, no new warning letters, no issues that we're seeing with your water at this point that's requiring any of that. So one of the things I'll also talk about is the roles and the responsibilities. And one of the things that I try to tell people is from the drinking water perspective, we answer the what and the why questions. Why do you need to do something, and what do you need to do? And so for an example here for your water system, it would be the granular activated carbon system that we recommended that the Rapidan Service Authority committed to putting in after the unknown odor event. So the other kinds of questions about where do you put that type of treatment, when can you put that treatment in, and how are you going to put that treatment in? Those are questions that get answered by the water system with their engineering consultations and on the how, when, and where. And then on our side, it's the what and the whys. So one of the challenges that we've had from the Office of Drinking Water side is the time it takes to do that. So there isn't a regulation that says you need to install a granular activated carbon system. You must install it within the next 3 weeks. One, it would be virtually impossible to do that. But the second piece to that is that what is a reasonable time? Because the regulations don't specify what is a reasonable time. So how did we work that out? Well, I got that kind of question gets worked out through negotiation with our compliance and enforcement division, with our engineering expertise, and we sort of check in and we ask, okay, well, we understand that you need to build a new granular activated carbon system. Where can you put it? And what we learned is that where the water treatment plant is currently located, it's physically bound by property boundaries that makes it really hard to put something on the physical plant site for new treatment where things exist and how they are. It also requires some engineering plans and some engineering evaluation studies and things like that. What kind of treatment system are you going to use? What's its operation and maintenance costs? What are the capital costs? There's long-term, short-term kinds of reflections that go on in the engineering department that need to be thought through. And then obviously, once you've gotten your permit, you've decided on the design, where you want to put it, how you're going to use it, and where you're going to use it within your treatment train. The next question becomes, can you get a permit for it? So to date, we haven't gotten the permit request for that. If you look at the consent order that was signed, the Rapidan Service Authority has through next year to figure this out. And that's a long time. We're trying to be, from the regulatory side, we're trying to accommodate the reasons and the rationale that are being presented to us from the water system on the technical issues. We agreed to that time frame, and I'll go back to the earlier point. Your water quality is good. Your operations have improved with the water system. We feel more confident in that things are being looked after more proactively than they were that led up to the event. So that gives us some reflections from the regulatory side of, that we can go through this a more iterative, slower process if that's what the service authority would like to do that owns the water system. The service authority needs financing, right? These things are not cheap. They cost a lot of money. The Rapidan Service Authority has requested $6.1 million in funding. We have an area in our Office of Drinking Water where we can provide grant funding or low interest loans below market value for infrastructure improvements at water systems. But again, it's a statewide program. It's competitive. So it matters how you score through this on the issues. And so the scoring looks at acute health risks. Is there something going on with the water system that puts the population at risk of getting sick in the near term? You don't have that here. We look at chronic health risks, things that could affect your health over the long term. That might be lead or PFAS, something that isn't going to cause a problem today, but if you drink that water with that contaminant over the next 30 years at a certain amount, it increases your risk for certain health things. Do you have that going on? That's not present here in your water system right now. We look at the public health side of it generally, about water pressure, water loss, secondary contaminants that aren't of primary concern, they're of secondary concern. Do you have any of those kinds of things going on? We're comfortable where this water system is, that those public health risks aren't here at a level that would cause us significant concern. Another thing that we look at on the scoring would be, are you consolidating or regionalizing the water system? So this gets into the economy of scale question. The bigger you are, the more the costs for something can be spread around. So I was talking about $6.1 million. There's 5,440 service connections in this for this facility that is served by 1.2 million gallon per day water treatment plant. You're looking at a new water treatment plant. You're looking at a new granular activated carbon system. And the request to us was for 6.1 million. So presumably those kinds of costs have to get spread out along the customer base and those 5,440 connections. And so we look at that. And one of the big things that we look at when we're looking at the financial side of that equation is one, do you have your financial house in order? But secondly, we look at what is your billing rate? And you get a higher score if you're considered a disadvantaged community. And what does disadvantaged mean? Well, it means that your water bill, if you take your monthly water bill and you multiply it by 12, that gives you a figure. And then if that water bill is above 1% of the median household income for the service area, then that would be considered disadvantaged. And so why do we have that rule? Well, it encourages public water systems to have a billing rate that is appropriate, that will lead you to higher scores so that you are making sure that you're at least billing at 1% or a little bit above if you're asking for money from the state. So that here, this community has a relatively high median household income, and your billing, if you look at it, doesn't hit that disadvantaged threshold for what's going on here in this community right now today. I know that the service authority, I think last year, implemented a 5-year billing plan on your water system. And so we took a look at that as part of the application for that 6.1 million, and it didn't come out, scoring very high in that regard, just because of the high median household income that you have here. The other areas that we look at for scoring is readiness to proceed. Do you have a permit? Have you got your engineering plans in order? Do you have the land that you need to install the granular activated carbon system? How ready are you to use the 6.1 million? Because we don't sit on the money from the federal government. This is grant and money that has to be spent and used. So a key component in some of the decision making beyond just, is it acute, is it chronic, flows to how ready are you to use the money? And right now, we've got a consent order that's spilling over, another 12 months from now. And so the readiness to proceed is not quite there yet for this. And then the final question that we ask as part of our scoring is what's your availability for other funding for the consumers to be able to accept, a higher billing rate, getting into that disadvantaged community. So where I'm going with all of this is that we've just completed this week the scoring for all of the applications in Virginia. And to give you a reflection, we had almost $150 million in infrastructure improvement requests across the Commonwealth for the 2,860 water systems. Of those 2,860 water systems, we had 31 applications. Of those 31 applications, we get to 150 million roughly. It was actually around 147 million, but I'm averaging up. So your community scored in the upper tier, but not quite where we would fund or offer funding. So then the question becomes, are the communities that are above this community going to accept the offers that we had? Because if you remember what I said earlier, we were talking about, as far as the funding goes, are you ready to proceed? You're a top tier candidate. And then if you're not ready to proceed, you got kind of a long way to go, which this community has. You're sort of in the upper tier, but toward the bottom. And so what that means is that if someone above the Rapidan Service Authority doesn't accept the loan or the grant money that we offer because they don't like it, or they've decided to go another way, or they've decided to delay the project, then we work down the list. So it's still possible that we might be able to fund something here that the Rapidan Service Authority has requested. Right now, I can say that's not the case. We're reaching out to other people who have filed applications who are in a different position, who scored higher on the scoring system. But if any of those that are above, because you're close enough that if any of those above decide not to accept the funding, then we might be making an offer. We'll probably know that within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So we're getting out letters to those that we can make offers to. We usually give them 2 weeks to get back to us. So I would think within, the 3 to 5 week range, 3 to 4 weeks, hopefully we'll be able to know with certainty about Rapidan Service Authority's ability to accept something. The last thing I'll mention is when we went into the consent order, so you go in, Mr. Davies mentioned about the notice of alleged violation following the odor event from last year, and we signed that consent order. That's a voluntary consent order, so we did not force it upon the Rapidan Service Authority. They agreed to it voluntarily, and that's why some of the timeframes look the way they do. The Service Authority agreed to some timeframes that we were willing to accept. It took a while to get through that negotiation on the timing. I will say personally, you're on a path, as I was telling Supervisor Nickel before the meeting. My view is that the Rapidan Service Authority is on a path to success. We're going to get that new water treatment plant. We're going to get the granular activated carbon system. It will be installed. The issue is how long will it take? And that the speed of which goes back to my earlier point about we don't generally answer the when question or the how question. We rely on the owner of the public water system to answer those where, when, and how questions. We've got the what and the whys on our side. So what I want to say is that your water system, you need to have a water system that's capable and reliable. We feel from the Office of Drinking Water's perspective that you're headed in that place. We're getting quarterly reports. We're confident of what we're seeing. And I can walk through a little bit of the information that we received from the Rapidan Service Authority about its most recent quarterly report. One of the things that they've already completed as of last year was implementing some operational changes to monitor the water quality. So one of the things that we recommended last year is to routinely check the odor, go look at the raw water intakes, and the Service Authority and the Executive Director, they created a standard operating procedure, and the staff are now routinely checking for that. So it won't be a situation that we had last year where the customers are reporting an unknown problematic odor. It'll get detected before it gets out into the water system is the goal. We feel that institutional process has been put into place. Jeremy has reviewed some of their documentation on that. He's inspected the water system as well, and we're confident that that is being implemented. A thing that is in progress is another standard operating procedure that deals with the construction that goes on at the water treatment plant. And we've got an SOP on how they're monitoring the construction that's currently under review with Jeremy's team. We received that last month, and things are looking pretty well in that regard as well from what we're seeing. Creating an asset management plan. So the Service Authority had an asset management plan, and basically what an asset management plan is to say, here's all of the things that are running this water treatment plant. How often does it need to be checked? How often does it need to be replaced so that we're staying ahead of things rather than something breaking and then having to order stuff that we're sort of managing the assets for the water treatment plant. That remains in progress. And we're expecting that to be completed sometime next year. June is what's in the consent order on that, and RSA is working on that, so that's a good thing. RSA also has a capital improvement plan. that I'm told from the executive director, Tim Clemens, that if anybody wants to see the capital improvement plan and the time frame on the how, where, when kinds of questions, that he would be happy to share that with you. It's currently not up on their website so that it's not for public view, but Mr. Clemens told me that anybody who's interested in seeing it can see it. The other things that we're looking at are an emergency response plan, emergency management plan from RSA. They completed that. Our team reviewed that. We were comfortable with their emergency response plan. One of the things that we learned from last year was that communication could be a lot better. And so RSA tells me that they've got a new system that they're onboarding as we speak. It's hopefully going to be a way for them to just reach out to the areas that are impacted, maybe from a broken water main or some disruption of service in an area of the community. Right now, the blast goes out to everybody, whether you're affected by it or not. And so RSA tells me that they've got a system that they think will do a lot better for you, so that you can sign up for it's going to connect apparently with the billing, with your email address or however you want to be contacted, and then auto send things out for the specific area. They also tell us that they're in the process as we speak today of hiring a communications expert to work on communications, to improve communications. We think that will be very helpful with their response and outreach to the community. It was one of the things that we found very lacking last year as far as the communication goes. And so RSA's now in a position where they've got a job advertised, and there's going to be somebody whose sole job is to focus on communication and improving communication. They've completed some other things in that consent order that have been helpful, I think, and some other things that they're still in progress for. So one of the things that they have done and completed is adding some intakes, adding cameras at the intakes so that there can be some more security and monitoring of what's going on around the water system to protect it. They've started up some new intake pump electrical gear, and there's some temporary wiring. They're doing a good job of monitoring that from what we're seeing, and that goes on. That's ongoing because that work is ongoing, as I understand it. And then obviously we were talking about the granular activated carbon filtration system. That's due by the end of next year. Again, that pace and that speed is one that's decided by the water system that we were willing to accept from the regulatory side. That continues in progress. So some of the things that they need to still do with that is get their plan on where they're going to put it, how they're going to use it, and submit the engineering plans to us so that we can issue a permit. And we can turn those permits around in 30 days. So I don't think that the regulatory review will be any issue once the service authority is ready to go with that. And so I'll turn it over to questions, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a number of questions. Oh, yes. Anybody at the table can take these. In addition to monitoring the quality of our drinking water, does the state of Virginia monitor the supply of water to ensure there is an adequate supply of drinking water, especially in the case of a drought like 99, 2002, 7, 8, 10, 12?
Well, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Jeremy for any additional comments. The short answer is yes. There is a quantity component that is monitored for water intakes. It's more of a responsibility of our sister agency, the Department of Environmental Quality. So for the drinking water side, we can say the water treatment plant can produce, in this case right now, 1.2 million gallons per day. Our sister agency, the Department of Environmental Quality, does the review on what can be pulled from that water body without having adverse environmental impacts. So from the drinking water side, we do not issue permits that exceed what our sister agency will say. Jeremy, I'll see if you got any additional reflections on quality or quantity.
Right. So you're right. The Department of Environmental Quality determines the amount of water that's available in the source, the Rapidan River. We evaluate the treatment plant capacity. We look at other factors in the system. Does it have enough storage, pumping capacity, other components, and we determine what the capacity of the waterworks is overall. Uh-huh.
And it stems from the fact that we had to go to drinking water back in 2002 because the Rapidan was basically almost dry. I think you're familiar with the droughts.
So really the question is focused on, does the state of Virginia, in addition to the quality of the water, do you actually help us manage the availability of water, the impoundments and things of that nature? It really deals with what if the Rapidan fails to produce enough water from a drought to provide ample drinking water to the residents?
Right. So that is more the sister agency, the Department of Environmental Quality, when they determine how much, water they are permitting for RSA to withdraw from the Rapidan River. They are doing an evaluation of historical water quality information to determine what the worst case situation may be. And the 2002 drought that you reference, I believe that is now the worst case situation.
Hold on one second. Excuse me, sir. Can you please?
No, we value the work that you're doing. I think the issue that we have here is with with all the new building permits, all the commercial building that's going on, the possibility of data, right? If all that comes online, who's to ensure that we're going to have ample supply of water? The quality, I applaud all the work you've done. This is really about supply. And I'm just trying to find out, does the state of Virginia, take a look at the availability of water?
If I could just
Yeah.
jump in there.
Yeah, please do.
The RSA had an application to increase the daily maximum draw out of the Rapidan within the last year. And before DEQ ruled on that, RSA pulled back the application. And so that, I think I'm right, that's where the regulation comes, that they would not approve an additional draw if it was going to jeopardize the supply.
Yeah, correct. And you, it's a great question. And what I'll add is you're kind of out of our realm of expertise because it's with the sister agency, but there is a requirement in the Code of Virginia about regional water supply planning. And so you'll get, it requires the Rapidan Service Authority to participate with a regional supply plan. And that has to look forward a number of years. I forget what it is. It might be 20 years or 30 years, because it's not my rule, but the sister agency works with the regional planning authorities, and every region has to create a regional water supply plan that addresses future growth as well as worst case drought scenarios.
Yeah, and RSA is represented on that, and Brian Nickel represents us as well on that regional commission. These two questions are related, so I'm going to group them. Is drinking water serving Locust Grove currently being tested for PFAS? And if those of you might not be familiar, PFAS are forever chemicals. They are persistent. They've been linked to health problems. And it's something that the federal government is working on regulations right now. And there was recently a hearing about the PFAS, potentially PFAS containing biosolids and whether they could be spread in Orange County. But is drinking water serving Locust Grove currently being tested for PFAS? And if so, will the full results rather than only the annual summary be made publicly? And also, with new federal PFAS limits taking effect, can the water system serving Locust Grove meet those standards without treatment upgrades? If upgrades are needed, who will pay for them, and has funding been identified?
So I'll start. they are required to test for PFAS. Right now, the PFAS rule requires an initial monitoring period, which is due in April of 2027, requires 4 samples quarterly over a year-long period. I believe those samples have been taken, Jeremy?
For RSA?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And they did not show, from my understanding,
Right.
any PFAS chemicals present in the water. But after that 2027 period, they will fall into a regular compliance monitoring schedule. So if they didn't show any initial monitoring PFAS chemical contaminants, they'll have to do a quarterly analysis every 3 years and submit that to the Office of Drinking Water for analysis. And their proposed GAC treatment that Dwayne was mentioning is a common treatment train process for dealing with PFAS chemicals, so that would help in that respect as well.
RSA indicated in September of 2024, over a year ago, that they were investigating granular activated carbon filtration. Their corrective action plan states that it won't have an engineering study until December 2026, and their operations director recently said it might be 2027. What is a reasonable time for a study, much less the implementation?
Yeah, this gets to my earlier point about the path to success, but it's going at a snail's pace. We're happy to work at the speed with which RSA is willing to commit resources to that. It's slower than what I personally would want it to be. With that being said, there are realities that the Service Authority has brought to our attention that do require planning and thought. One is where are you going to put the new water treatment plant? The second is where can you put the granular activated carbon? And you don't want to be in a position where you build a new GAC system, a granular activated carbon GAC system for your existing water treatment plant when you know you're getting ready to build a new water treatment plant because you don't want to build it twice. So they're sort of landlocked right now. RSA is landlocked to some degree. And so these are the sort of realities that were presented to us from the regulatory perspective when we were negotiating the time frame. And in our view, RSA proposed a time frame that's reasonable considering those circumstances. Landlocked, need to build a new water treatment plant, and you don't want to invest in something that you're going to then have to reinvest again. So Jeremy, I'll see if there's any additional thought or Grant that you guys want to add to that.
So yeah, another factor when we were considering those timeframes were, that there's now a change. So the first item in the corrective action plan regarding enhanced source water quality monitoring, that's something that, makes it a little bit easier to say, well, the granular activated carbon won't be needed as urgently because now we've got another protective measure in place. In discussions with RSA, they firmly believe they'll be able to get that preliminary engineering report to us sooner than December 2026. But given that this is a consent order and that these are enforceable deadlines, they built in, a little bit of extra time for unforeseen circumstances. But their goal is to get that report to us as soon as possible.
And another consideration also, in addition to what Jeremy said, is the financing piece of this. Depending on how you move forward with this, it could in fact impact rates on the customers and that sort of thing. So there's different considerations that are being balanced, and we're kind of leaning in on the how, where, when, more so than we might otherwise be with what the Service Authority is telling us.
It's probably just as well that this question is a little vague so I don't get myself into trouble, but why can't the RSA purchase the lot adjacent to it to install the required facility? First of all, it's my understanding that there are no available lots next to the Wilderness Water Treatment Plant. I suspect somebody may be referring to the building on Route 3. where there's a lot available next to it, that would be no help at all. And the other piece is if RSA is going to build a second or a newer water treatment plant, they have to identify a location. It has to be proximate to the source of the water, et cetera, et cetera. The other piece that is not on this question is about a reservoir or impoundment. It was about 10 years ago that the GWAP development plan, and a few years more recent than that, maybe 8 years ago, the water and wastewater plan said we absolutely have to have another source of water, whether that's a source, whether that's an impoundment, a reservoir, or something else. And very little has happened on that. I believe the county appropriated some money to study that in last year's budget. I suspect that they'll be asked to do that again, but there has to be research to find a location. But building one of these reservoirs or impoundments does not happen overnight. I think it's a 5 to 10 year process from start to finish, one estimate I saw. So. Already addressed some of this, but I'd like to know about the general safety of our drinking water, long-term effects of the chlorine.
So one of the risks when you add chlorine, it provides a lot of benefit, right? So that you're not going to get sick. You're disinfecting the water, but there are byproducts. So there's organics in the water from the river body, and those organics interact with chlorine, and they're called disinfection byproducts. And so we're monitoring for disinfection byproducts in all the public water systems that disinfect. And what I can say is for the past 3 quarters, this RSA has been below the threshold for risks of disinfection byproducts according to the regulatory standard. Jeremy, do you want to add anything about disinfection byproducts?
I'll just say, if the question was regarding the chlorine itself as an additive to drinking water, it does provide a very necessary benefit in controlling pathogens in the drinking water. The present standard for the maximum amount of chlorine residual in the water established by the Safe Drinking Water Act is 4 milligrams per liter. So there is a number that has been determined to potentially be harmful to health. The level that's used in this waterworks and all waterworks is always below that value. So in this system, it's, half of that, 2 milligrams per liter, most likely.
And it was mentioned earlier that the RSA is adding a communication specialist, which I think is tremendous from a number of standpoints. One of the things that I've learned since joining the board a couple months ago is that there are some measures that are being studied and pursued that none of us knows about, that really we ought to know about. I mean, it's a feather in RSA's cap that they're doing some of these things, but the word hasn't gotten out. The report that was coming quarterly on the haloacetic acids listed all of the areas, and in most cases there was only one that was over the threshold, and yet all of us got them, and all of us were concerned, even though our area may not have been involved. And so I don't think RSA has done itself favors with communication, and I think that's going to improve. Please mention the causes of bad water quality. What are the solutions and what is the cost? There's a big one for you.
Well, Jeremy, just generally, what are some quality concerns with water?
I mean, the chlorine residual, I know some people are sensitive to elevated levels of chlorine. The Safe Drinking Water Act is looking at, not ensuring our drinking water is free of all substances. It's expected that there are things in our drinking water. The goal is to keep them below harmful levels. And that's where we're at today with the wilderness water system. So that's the good news. If this question is referring to, periodic upsets within the distribution system that, lead to discolored water, that's something that a majority of utilities deal with. Over time, some sediments, inert sediments that aren't harmful to health, they can accumulate within the distribution system. If there's a sudden increase in flow rate through the system due to, maybe there's some fire hydrant flushing or something like that, that might stir that sediment up and lead to discolored water at your home. Those episodes, hopefully are minimal. When you do experience them, you can contact the Rapid Hand Service Authority and they can come out and investigate exactly what the cause of that issue was.
That answers the question,
hopefully
why
that
is
answers
the
the
water brown? So they knocked that one off. I had my water tested by an independent lab in September 2024 after the pump failure. They were not a company that sells water treatment systems. The level of haloacetic acids measured 19 to 20,000 above the health grade level. I understand health grade level is an unenforceable measurement. What does health grade level mean, and why is it included in water test results if it's an unenforceable measure?
So there are a lot of different organizations that set their own standard. So there's a couple of environmental organizations that are out there, and there's different debates among experts, toxicologists, on what can be harmful or what can't be harmful. To give you a reflection about how EPA has implemented the rules under the Safe Drinking Water Act, they generally try to look at the worst case scenario. So an infant, a pregnant woman, something that someone who's immunocompromised, and then they say, okay, those are your highest risk populations. And then they look at, if that person drank this water 2 liters a day over the next 30 years, what would be the increased risk of having a health impact, a cancer or something that is associated with that. So many of the chronic standards that you see for the drinking water standards are very safe standards. And so the disinfection byproducts falls into this same category. EPA has established a limit of, I think it's 80 parts per billion. Am I getting that right, Jeremy?
For haloacetic acids, it's 60 parts per
Okay.
billion. For trihalomethanes, it's 80.
There you go. So I'm glad we brought the engineer. So when they set that level at the federal level, you can be confident that even though you might have some of that in your water system, it hasn't reached the level where the most sensitive populations drinking that over a long period of time, and a lot of water, 2 liters of water a day is a lot of water over 30 years, that's going to have a certain unacceptable risk at 80 and 60 from what Jeremy was saying. But if you're below that, the risk has not been determined to be of significance until you reach that level. So it gets to Jeremy's earlier point that whether you're pulling water from well water or you're getting water from a public water system, we've got over 90 contaminants now that are regulated, and if you're looking at those, and in the broad sense, there's tens of thousands of chemicals that are out there, right? And so we're looking at a subset of those, but we feel confident under the federal rule that if you're doing a good job with this subset, we're taking care of the other things that are of problem and concern. So, that's just the reality of sort of the risk of it.
Is there a concern that EPA funding to the Commonwealth will be reduced?
Yes. So with respect to funding, EPA put out a budget earlier this year that suggested it would significantly reduce or end funding to the states for the drinking water program. So one of the things that's part of my job is to raise this issue to our state representatives to be aware of this. risk. And, you know, for example, a few years ago, the drinking water program was receiving about $18.2 million in funding from one grant. That has reduced down to 4.9 million. All right. And so, as I was saying earlier, there's three funding sources: fees from the regulated community, the general fund from the General Assembly through general tax revenue, and then the federal government. What we're seeing is that those federal dollars are at risk. And so the question to maintain our public water system is making sure that we've got the funding on the fees from the regulated community and from the state if the federal government is not going to continue doing what it's done in the past.
A question about water filtering. Is there a whole house filtration system that you would recommend? Are there grants to help pay for them? What's the difference between a filtration system and reverse osmosis? And one more question. I've heard from two different residents who have whole house filtering systems. One who said that he changed his filter after a year and there was no noticeable difference. Someone else actually sent us a picture that every 2 months she has to change hers. Does it depend on the system? Does it depend where you are on the line, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's lots of options and different costs associated with those options for homeowners. When you're connected to a public water system here, we generally recommend that you reach out to your operators and the service authority folks and let them know that you're looking at maybe doing a point of use where you're doing something that maybe at your kitchen sink, or maybe you're just using your refrigerator filter, or you could be doing some sort of treatment before it comes in, a whole house sort of kind of treatment that you might get. The thing I'll just remind everybody is that there's really good products and really cheap products. There's different operation and maintenance costs associated with them. And, you know, we're monitoring the water on the public water side. If you install one of these point of use filtration systems at your home, you need to be mindful of the operation and the maintenance that is associated with it. You might want to consider taking samples because sometimes if, you know, these systems, if they're not properly operated or maintained, they can cause a high influx. They can build up the things it's taking out and then shoot them out if you're not careful about how you operate and maintain it. So there's lots of different options. There's a lot of different technologies. Generally, I would look at the National Sanitation Foundation. They've got some ratings and some testing on products. Try to lean into that if you're thinking about it. But Jeremy, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think you covered that one pretty thoroughly.
Just two more questions, and then we're going to take a little stretch break and transition to stormwater. Testing is reactive. What is being done in a proactive discovery way to discover and prevent a water contamination problem to begin with?
Yeah, it's a great point with that question. So whenever you're taking a water sample, it's a point in time, and it tells you what's going on right then and there. It does give you confidence that, you know, if things are going on there with routine sampling, that things are going to be okay going forward. So generally, the proactive piece of this is your operator staff and the competencies of your operators that you're hiring. And we were talking about earlier about standard operating procedures, taking things out of judgment calls and just putting them part of the routine. So before the event from last year, customers informed the staff, the Rapidan Service Authority's staff about the odor. We think that we now have proactive processes in place where that would get identified before it reached the customers and that the water treatment plant staff could address it quickly before it moved through the water treatment plant and out into the distribution system. So a lot of the proactive stuff has to do with your procedures, your policies, your training, and your knowledge and skills of your operators that you're hiring.
I'm going to combine these two. Can LOA or RSA hire a professional company to analyze RSA's water quality problems for a long-term solution? And second part, how was RSA allowed by the state to get so behind on following state requirements? And I guess I would reframe that and say, were they behind?
I would say no. When the odor event happened, RSA was being monitored on a routine basis. And, one of the things that I sometimes reflect on is the low probability, high impact. It's Nassim Taleb's black swan kind of event. And so, in the emergency response planning and the emergency planning with the Rapidan Service Authority, the staff there need to be thinking about what are low probability, high impact type of events, and how would we respond to those kinds of events. The water quality, as I was mentioning, complies with the regulations. The water is safe to drink. You haven't had disinfection byproduct violations in the last 3 quarters. So we're confident in your drinking water from the state perspective. Jeremy, you inspect the treatment plant and work with the staff, you and your team. Anything you want to add, sir?
No, not in particular. Maybe more so to the previous question, about proactive monitoring. There are surrogates out there that are monitored, during the treatment process regularly throughout the day. The sampling that Dwayne referenced, the 15 samples per month, those give us an indication that water quality is generally being maintained throughout that time frame. So there are other aspects to the operation that allow us to have that confidence that if the treatment plant is meeting this particular surrogates parameter, then we are confident that the treatment plant is doing its job and removing the other contaminants that are present.
The last question is actually a teaser for a future town hall, but it's related. These guys deal with the intake. This details with the outflow. Sewer charges are the greatest aspect of our billing and increasing regularly. And what's being done? That is a question for another time. What I would say is that when you look at your RSA bill, you have to really examine it and see what's what. There is a drinking water component that actually, when RSA did a rate study a year or 2 ago, is quite low compared to communities like ours. But then you get into the sewage, and there's a sewage usage fee that is higher than the drinking water fee. There's a regional sewage system fee, and then there's a specific LOA fee of $23.50 a month, and that is to do a complete overhaul of the vacuum sewage system that we have here at Lake of the Woods, a system that nobody would design for a community of 4,000 some mostly year-round people today, but we have it, we're stuck with it, it's got to be improved. And that $23.50 a month is going into a separate pot that will be used to upgrade the 13 pump stations that are around the lake. Some of them just need larger pumps. Some of them probably are going to need completely new, the little brick buildings to fit everything inside them. And there may even be a need for an additional pump station as some of the areas have built out farther away from the pump, and obviously vacuum degrades at a distance. So that's a whole other question that we'll probably tackle maybe at the next town hall meeting. But what I'd like to do is thank the folks from the Office of Drinking Water, and
Thank you.
let's take a 5-minute stretch break, and we'll bring on Richard Jacobs. All right, have your attention, please. Most of you are aware of the damage that Lake of the Woods suffered from the extreme storms. Most of you are aware of the damage that Lake of the Woods sustained from the extreme storms and resultant flooding this past June and July. Although some of this can be attributed to unprecedented back-to-back severe rainfall events, there's no doubt that some aspects of flood prevention are under our control. Richard Jacobs has been involved with Lake of the Woods for years, knows the property, is consulted on new construction, among other things, and Richard will speak about stormwater management in developed communities like ours.
Okay. Yep. Good evening. Yeah. So again, my name's Richard Jacobs. I work for the Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District. I'll go ahead and, because every time I come to a new group of, a new community to talk to, I just have to kind of talk about who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And then I'll, touch a little bit about, I'll accept any questions about stormwater, but I can just give you kind of a broad, overview of what stormwater impacts. So, again, I've been working for the Culpeper District for about 20 years now. Just as some background for me, I have training as an engineer from Virginia Tech, and I do a variety of different tasks for the district. One of them is reviewing site plans, construction plans for erosion control and stormwater management. So the district itself is made up of, we cover 5 counties. We're an independent agency, independent subsidiary of the state government with our own elected board members. You guys will be voting for them in 2 years. They, it's every 4 years, and it's usually during the governor's race. So there's 2 representatives for Orange County, and you're welcome to do a petition and try to get on the ballot for that if you want. It's an unpaid position, though. Yeah, so we're managed by a board of directors. We have right now we cover 5 counties: Culpeper, Madison, Orange, Greene County, and Rappahannock. So the upper Rappahannock River Basin. So we have a good feel on we work primarily with farmers. So we have a good feel for the farming community in this area. And we work closely with the counties on, again, a kind of a wide variety of topics. We're usually a stakeholder in a lot of these discussions that go around. I know, I think sometimes we get pulled into emergency management stuff and water supply planning, those sorts of issues. So what we do is that we initially were formed. There's 47 districts across the whole state. So the state, our districts were formed almost 100 years ago during the Dust Bowl. So our primary goal is to try to conserve and protect the soil on the farms. And in so doing that, we also protect water quality. So our primary focus is water quality, and to make the farmer more productive with his land. Over time, we've evolved, and we do provide more education and outreach to organizations like yourself. We are involved in the schools. We teach the teachers. We do a bunch of different things education-wise. We provide technical assistance to farmers, landowners, homeowners. And then the last thing that we do, the really big thing that we do, is implement BMPs, best management practices. So these are practices that it's a combination of management practices that like a farmer would use, or maybe a homeowner would do in their yard, or it could be a physical practice to improve water quality. Some of the examples include for farmers would be that livestock exclusion fencing is a big one. Keep the cattle out of the water to prevent bacteria and other nutrients from getting into the water and causing problems there. We also do cover crops and and what I'll talk about here in a few minutes is that we do have some stormwater practices as well that we implement. There are other things that we do in that I would like to take a moment for. So we do work on septic. We have a septic program that helps maintain septic systems. You guys are not on that, so most of you won't apply. And we also we work with the extension office to do well water testing for your private wells. But if you are on a community system, or if you're interested in what's coming out of your tap, you can probably go ahead and participate in this program as well. Usually it's limited to about 50 or 60 tests a year whenever they do it. It's through the extension office. It's a reduced cost to do the well testing clinic. And they do cover some of the water treatment systems that you might want to install in your home. Like the Department of Health was saying, is that the waterworks test the water when it leaves their system, doesn't test it when it comes into your home. Yeah, so yeah, septic. Okay, so why do we focus on water quality? Well, it's because what runs off of the farm fields, what runs off of your lawns, ends up in our waterways and our lakes, and can cause various different problems there. Some of the obvious problems would be sedimentation, right? You see muddy water suspended in the water column. You see sediments covering the stream bottom, which is habitat to our fish and other aquatic organisms. It can also carry with it invisible pollutants, like nutrients. It can carry petroleum products, all sorts of other toxic chemicals as well. Most of our practices are focused on sediment and nutrients, so phosphorus and nitrogen being the two big ones. We also, and some of that's stormwater impact coming from the various different land uses, the farms and the lawns, impacts the waterways, and the Department of Environmental Quality, they monitor those waterways, and they give each waterway what's called a designated use. So drinking water is a beneficial use. It's just one of the uses that we use our fresh water. A designated use is something that the environmental scientists use to categorize the quality of our water. So the highest quality is going to be the fishable, swimmable, recreational use for the water, right? So we want to be able to have water that's clean enough for us to safely eat the fish that's in the water and safely swim in the water and have some sort of physical contact. So DEQ does the monitoring of the streams for that. And the big thing that they look for that determination is bacteria contamination. Of course, bacteria mostly comes from manure as well as our wastewater system. So either the wastewater treatment plants or your septic systems that are out there. So that's the primary thing that they're looking for in a lot of those analysis. They do a wide they monitor the waterways for a wide variety of components, but bacteria is the one that that if it hits a certain level, it's no longer swimmable and it may not be fishable. Of course, they do look at lead and other toxic chemicals which affects the fishable criteria as well, because you've seen those fish advisories, right, in certain waterways. Right now in Culpeper County, Mountain Run has had a fish advisory for large portions of it. That's the main stream that comes out of the town. So there's some toxic chemicals that are affecting the eels, if you want to eat the eels. But I think it also affects some other fish that's in the waterway. In the Shenandoah River, you got catch limits based off of all those factories, the DuPont spills, and I think there were some spills up in Front Royal. So you had chemicals entering the Shenandoah River from different sources as well. So these impairments, these are called impairments of water quality that DEQ designates. So when a water gets designated as impaired, then they do a study to figure out where that contamination is occurring. So all these pollutants are coming from the land, being washed off by stormwater and by runoff. These are what's called non-point sources of pollution because we can't really identify where it's coming from. For bacteria, they can do some genetic tests to figure out whether it's human bacteria or cow bacteria. So that's kind of what the extent of that study is, that they do an analysis of the bacteria. They might do multiple different samples further upstream to figure, to try to find out exactly which tributary stream might be coming from it. And then from that study, they develop a implementation plan or a cleanup plan. So they develop a cleanup plan that lists a variety of BMPs, best management practices. So in our world, we deal with BMPs. In the drinking water world and the wastewater world, they're using technology-based practices. So they do a technology approach. He talked about the carbon filters as being one of those options. So they do have to upgrade the wastewater treatment facilities, upgrade the water treatment plants with better technology, better filters to remove those contaminants. So for us, we're looking at these BMPs. They can be kind of a shot in the dark, but we try to a lot of times it's going to be focused on what's coming off the farm fields, but in some cases it could be coming off of your lawns and septic systems. So a lot of the work that a lot of the federal funding that we get is used to implement these, what's called a total maximum daily load, a TMDL, or a TMDL implementation plan. So that's where we work with applicants and we get them to install these BMPs to help meet that goal. So yes, so that's the water quality components. For stormwater management, construction sites are regulated through the county and through the state. They have to implement erosion control measures, and they do have to implement some level of stormwater management. And some of that stormwater management treats for quantity of water, and some of it will treat just the quality. And it kind of depends on the site and the conditions. Most sites will treat both quantity and quality for stormwater management. Yeah, so the quality is based off of phosphorus being the largest source of nutrients leaving the site. They don't treat necessarily for any of the other toxic chemicals coming from the construction sites or development in general. So phosphorus is kind of the indicator pollutant. So if we're capturing phosphorus and reducing it, we're hoping that we're capturing the other pollutants as well. And erosion control is kind of the same way. If we can capture the sediments, hopefully we're also capturing phosphorus and those other pollutants. But erosion control is only during construction, and then stormwater management is supposed to be installed during construction, but be maintained and continue well beyond. Yeah, so guess in your community here, we've I know the association is working on some stormwater projects right now as we speak, trying to address some of these flooding issues. Yeah. Some of the stuff that we're doing, and so I'll leap into this. So there's a grant program that's out there right now called the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. I got a display over here on this table. I have a brochure as well that you can take. So this is kind kind of a stormwater cost share grant. So it's not going to cover the cost of all you know, the entire installation process, but it will help cover some of it. So this is a voluntary program. Just so so just to clarify again, the agricultural program that I talked about that we do with farmers, that's voluntary. We're not forcing the farmers to install them. This is the same way. We're not forcing you to install stormwater practices on your site, but if you do have what we call a resource concern on your property, dealing with erosion or poor vegetation or some sort of excess runoff issue, we could look at a variety of options. Most of these practices are small scale or micro scale because it's intended to treat just your lot. A lot of them try to incorporate vegetation as much as possible because the soft approaches could be the most cost effective in the long run. So we try to, we don't do any funding of any riprap to harden a ditch or anything like that, or installing a pipe. So most of these practices are focused on vegetation and absorption, infiltration of stormwater, usually close to the source, usually a downspout or maybe next to your driveway. So there's a variety of practices, anywhere from, again, kind of a conservation landscaping option, all the way through to like a rain garden or a larger infiltration basin to help get the water into the ground. We do cover, there are some what I kind of consider like icing practices, like permeable pavement and green roofs. Those are high-end stormwater treatment. So, and yeah, I guess just to kind of finish off and maybe hand it over to some questions. Yeah, the floods, we had severe floods this year in June and July. So we had huge amounts of water early on, but we also had drought. And it doesn't matter which one we have. Both of them can cause problems for our waterways. Either you're washing off a lot of nutrients into the waterway, or right now we're have low water levels everywhere, and it's affecting the organisms and the quality of the water. It affects the organisms living in the water, which help cycle the nutrients, and it's also affecting just the quality of the water itself, because we look at oxygen and some other levels. So when the water is really low, the water begins to stagnate, and the biological uptake and the chemical breakdown of all the stuff that was in the water isn't happening in a drought. So, okay, so I'll take some questions if there are.
Excellent. What is the process for assessing new construction at Lake of the Woods in terms of stormwater drainage? What is your role? What's the county's role? And what's the association's role?
Okay. Good question. Yeah, so the district is contracted with the county to provide plan review services, both for construction projects, but we also work with their planning and zoning office for larger rezones and use permits as well. The association here has a memorandum of agreement with the county to permit certain sites. So not every infill site in the lake here is necessarily being required for a higher level plan and review and approval. So the projects that are being reviewed and engineered are the ones that are modifying existing drainage easements, or possibly impacting waterways. So any site that's has a creek flowing through it, or has these drainage easement ditches, or in some cases, these drainage easements don't even have a ditch per se, but they're just kind of drawn on the plat on your lot plan. So those ones typically require a more formal plan, which is developed by an engineer. Most of these home builders are getting an engineering firm to develop a plan. The plan includes erosion control, and then it also will include computations and justification for modifying that drainage easement, whether they're just moving it over and digging out a new ditch, or if they're putting in a pipe system, they're supposed to justify that pipe, that channel is adequately sized, that's not going to cause any erosion, and will have adequate capacity to prevent what we call localized flooding. So you have general flooding from like a stream channel going out into the floodplain, but then you do have localized flooding, which could happen pretty much anywhere where there's a constriction in the system.
And who has the final say on one of those lots that needs easement? Is it the county? Is it LOA?
Yeah, I think the way it works is that the Lake of the Woods, I guess it's the environmental committee, right? Or yeah, so they do kind of a determination on whether a site will be modifying this drainage easement. So they kind of start off the process and with telling the builder that they need to submit a plan. The county receives those plans. I review them. I do provide an approval recommendation. So we're the review authority. We're not technically acting as the approval authority. So the county does grant approval, usually based off of our recommendation. So, and then the environmental committee, they can provide additional feedback if need be. But yeah, I don't think they do that. But
Great. Thank you. Some have observed that the flooding at the back gate this summer was caused in part by the overtopping of the VDOT culverts under Flat Run Road. Do you agree with this? If so, whose responsibility is it to enlarge those culverts?
yeah, so I did look at that situation with Keegan, and yeah, I would generally agree that yeah, there is considering that there's several culvert pipes there that are smaller than the box culverts under Lakeview Parkway. That's an obvious constriction point. There is that FEMA floodplain on either side of the road, but yeah, just the idea that those pipes don't pass storms like this, where the Lakeview Parkway box culverts did pass that storm, right? So I don't think yeah, any sort of flooding on Parkview Avenue was caused by that obstruction in the water overtopping Flat Run Road. So who's responsible? You know, VDOT, it's a VDOT road. It's you know, it's their responsibility to maintain those culverts. To the best of my knowledge, they have like a checklist or some criteria that they look at to determine when to replace it. So it's not like, should it be replaced? They kind of look at when is the appropriate time to replace it. They usually try to do those sorts of works when there is maintenance need for those pipes. So I don't think they would. I mean, there could be other mechanisms out there, but I don't think their staff is going to just go ahead and replace it out of their good hearts. But they're going to wait until those culverts are in need of some sort of repair before they can justify replacing them.
There are a couple of lots on Route 20 near Flat Run Road that are listed for sale. Given recent flooding events, how much more hardscape is reasonable, and who makes those decisions? What metrics are used to decide if those are buildable lots without causing flooding for Flat Run and Lake of the Woods?
Yeah, so that's the area up by you're saying the Route 20 corridor or more. Yeah. So there's several lots there. I think one was going to be a storage unit at one time and dump into Confederate Circle. Yeah, so yeah, I think for any sort of rezones and special use, it's the county's determination to to allow certain uses. So yeah, the amount impervious cover could be limited during those rezone. Could be a condition possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure what the legality is, but certainly that's some recommendations that that I've provided or that could be provided to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for any sort of rezones or special use permits for various high intense activities occurring on those particular lots. Yeah, because I think everyone cherishes property rights. So so it's really we really have to have justification for some of those limitations. So um, when they do develop those sites, again, they're supposed to make sure that they're providing adequate erosion control, adequate stormwater management, so that they're not overburdening the system downstream. Of course, right now, the stormwater criteria, they look at the 1 year and the 10-year storm event. So for the stormwater criteria, they look at the 1 and 10-year storm. If they're maintaining those at pre-development rate, they can discharge whatever they want, almost wherever they want. Under the erosion control regulations, they do need to have like an adequate channel to discharge it in. So there is kind of a interconnection between those two different requirements. And because the stormwater program is more state run, there's a state permit for large construction sites over an acre in size. Most engineers, most developers feel that they're meeting the state stormwater code that they can go ahead and they're free to discharge stormwater. There are some other techniques that can be applied if there is no channel to discharge into, and that's where you try to disperse the runoff as much as possible. But those, those can be tricky for sure.
Lake of the Woods has fallen short of its goal for ditch restoration in recent years. What role does ditch restoration and maintenance play in flood control and stormwater management?
Yeah, so any sort of maintenance of your drainage pathways will certainly help stormwater flow. So you want to make the biggest criteria is making sure that you have enough capacity in your channels in your system so that it doesn't flood out. And you want to also make sure that it's not going to erode at the same time. So doing that sort of maintenance and evaluation periodically could it's better than not doing anything. So removing those leaves is important because those are going to block up culverts underneath your driveways and cause the ditch above you to pool and maybe overtop the road. Yeah, this is something that I didn't take to heart last year. I think it was in my own subdivision because the weather guy it was that February storm, if you guys remember. I don't think it was 25. I think it was in 24. There was a February storm and where it was like 2 inches of rain on a cold winter night, and all that just ran off because it couldn't soak into the ground. And they said to clean out your storm drains, and I didn't do it. So even me, the stormwater expert, had an issue where the water went over my gravel driveway and didn't wash it away, but I mean, it caused some gullies and stuff like that. So I guess both the lake and the homeowner should be aware of that if there are these storm events, and if the weather guy does say to clean out your ditches or in your culvert pipes, you probably should try to do something before the storm hits, just to give yourself some capacity to shoot it out. And I guess on the other side of things, yeah, part of that maintenance could include replacing culverts or pipes that are rusted out or in need of repair, and replacing the rocks at the end of the culvert. Because again, we want to not just have capacity so that you're not flooding, but also not causing erosion at the same time. So we do utilize some rocks on steep slopes and at the end of pipes. Those are where you really want to think about using those.
A few questions on biosolids. What role does your organization play in decision-making regarding the proposal to use biosolids on farmlands in Orange County? What conversations are there about the effect of these biosolids on stormwater management and preventing contaminants from entering the rivers and lakes in Orange County? And then one more. A family on Route 20 rents a home. The owner is having biosolids put on land. Concerns because they have a well system.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yes, it is. Yeah, so biosolid applications, which I think they might have mentioned it, is regulated. It's a regulated activity. It's usually through the Department of Environmental Quality, because you're taking a wastewater byproduct and putting it back on the land. There are some stringent requirements out there for the farmers. Usually they can't put it anywhere near a waterway. I know I've seen this. It's you know, if you're a little bit more observant out there, if you know a particular farm field that's that's going to have biosolids applied, they usually put flagging 200 feet away from waterways and away from the property line. So that's the limit to where the biosolids are supposed to go. So the biosolids are required to fit a very tight envelope and be far away from waterways. Yeah, our organization, we don't necessarily, we don't do any of the regulation of that. We probably work with farmers who do that as part of a nutrient management plan. So we help farmers write up a nutrient management plan, and then the farmer implements it, and the plan could include biosolids as an option. Yeah, most likely it's more manure, but same thing. Some sort of waste product is applied because that's the cheapest material out there rather than using commercial fertilizer. Not sure if I covered it all, but
No,
yeah.
I think you did. And I think we're going to wrap things up here. I want to, first of all, thank Richard for coming out. Let's give him a hand. And I do know, I don't know how many of you have met our Director of Environmental Resources, Keegan Angerer, but he is tremendous, knowledgeable. He's got his boots in the mud on a regular basis or in the lake, and he and Richard work closely together on projects. Richard mentioned genetic testing to determine the source of E. coli. You know that we had several E. coli outbreaks in both lakes this summer. And it's not clear right now exactly where that came from. Did it come from one of the sewage tanks overtopping? Did it come from runoff? Did it come from geese? We all know that we have an increasing population of geese. He is going to test the DNA of the E. coli to determine the source, and that will help us address the E. coli blooms. Just a couple of upcoming events I would mention. On November 18th, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, I guess, VDOT is holding an information session at the Locust Grove Elementary School, I think. Middle school, thank you. It's elementary, yeah. Check Lake Currents, but I'm pretty sure it's elementary. And this is about two projects. The one doesn't affect us directly. It's a roundabout out on Route 20. But the one that's closer to here is a redo of the intersection of Route 3 and Route 20. And I won't editorialize on it, but the one most concerning impact is that in order to go to Wells Fargo or 7-Eleven or that plaza, you're going to have to go past the intersection, go up toward the winery, and make a U-turn. And I don't know what they're going to do about extending the acceleration lane for those that make the U-turn, if they're going to consider reducing the speed limit from 55. But there are lots of concerns about that. And then other people have concerns about not being able to go straight across from Route 20 into that plaza. So if you're interested in that, November 18th, and then November 19th, the Orange County Board of Supervisors has their annual meeting at Lake of the Woods. That'll be in the clubhouse, in the clubhouse. If you'd like to make member comments, 6 o'clock in the clubhouse, November 19th, the supervisors will be there and have their annual meeting. So without further ado, thank you all for coming. We have a tradition here at Lake of the Woods of helping to put the chairs up. So if you could grab one and put it on the